quotes from Dunleavy are kind of wild. They're kind of wild.
I'm looking forward to hearing them.
They are open for some level of interpretation. How about that?
Okay.
Let's start with this one. And most of these, if not all, are courtesy of our friends Dalton Johnson and Anthony Slates. Dalton Johnson had this one. Mike Dunleavy on the Warriors offseason and injury risks. Quote, we had to make a decision between talent and availability. And I think we leaned more towards talent.
Talent?
End quote.
Or availability, and you lean more toward talent, which means Kristaps Porzingis is talented, but he may not be available. And Al Horford and, sure. I mean, D'Anthony Melton, you hope he can be both now that he's a full year removed from his surgery, but that's a little bit of a shot. It's kind of a Roger Federer, a backhanded compliment.
Wait a minute, it's a shot to who?
To, like, your players. Like, we went with talent as opposed to availability. In other words, yeah, Kristaps, you're really good, but let's be fair. You're going to play 41 games.
Well, it's better than the other shot. What if he had said the opposite?
Right. We lean toward availability as opposed to talent.
Yeah, they suck.
Look at you, pods.
But they'll be there.
Right.
That is a fascinating quote to me, that he even would go there. Because I think to the point you're making, he's sort of, and I don't know what the nature of the original question was, but he kind of painted himself into a corner there. Again, we had to make a decision between talent and availability, and I think we leaned more towards talent. That's just a rough subject.
It is, but if you look at the roster, it's hard to not look at the roster and say, yeah, that's exactly what you did. Kristaps Porzingis is more talented than he is available, and I think you could say the same thing about Al Horford.
I guess. I mean, there's just a bunch of follow-up questions to it. First of all, what do you already know about the lack of availability? Like, in theory, Kristaps Porzingis is a blank slate. I don't know. You know, Al Horford has to play by rules at his age, essentially. And so they went no back-to-backs, and I sort of assume that that's going to be the case again this year. That's not Kristaps. I don't know. I mean, he can play 82. No, but he's allowed to. There's There's nothing on the docket that says you absolutely can't play him.
What was it, 12 guys last year played all 82? Something like that?
Yeah, maybe
not many
a couple more.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying he'll play 82. Yeah. That's ridiculous. But, you know, the nature of what he has to deal with is so mysterious to all of us. I have no idea what to expect or what's around any bend. So is he going to miss games? Sure. But it's not like you can pull, I wouldn't think at least, you could pull out a pen and just start crossing off games right now. You can do that with Al.
Well, I think you can do that also with Kristaps based on whether it's back-to-backs or if it's 3 games in 4 nights where, you know, you have a back-to-back and then a travel spot. I do think that when you look at this upcoming season, not that it's a full-on gap year, but the best-case scenario would be you get to April, Jimmy has come back, Moses has come back in whatever form they are, and everybody else is mostly healthy. You get to April, the season's over, you go 39-43, and you're the 9 seed or you're the 10 seed. All right, time to boogie, as you like to say. Mm-hmm. You get everybody healthy, you've got the talent, and now maybe you have the availability as well.
I guess my point on Kristaps would be, it's Potts, right?
That's what we were told.
Yeah.
And then we were told it wasn't, and yeah.
Whatever he deals with, is that in theory affected by back-to-backs? Or is it just affected by whenever the hell it flares up?
That's my understanding.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. That's why, in theory, Kristaps can play as long as there's no flare-up. Or not. I still am completely confused by that situation.
Just reading about it, it's something that impacts heart rate and circulation, and it just pops up. And, you might wake up in the morning and you might have an elevated heart rate, or you may feel numbness in your hands because your circulation's not really working right. And so at that point, maybe you can't go. It seems to me to be something that is really something that flares up and goes away and comes back and goes away, something that he kind of always deals with.
My other follow-up question would be, why did you feel like you had to make a decision between those two things? And maybe that he would fall back on the what options did we have, right? The financial constraints, the injuries, the availability of other players wasn't necessarily there. We tried on LeBron, it didn't work. Maybe that would be the answer, but I don't know. I'm fascinated by we had to make a decision between talent and availability. Why did you feel that way? I mean, there had to be a different 7-footer who was talented and more available than Al Horford, right? Or maybe not. Maybe that's what he's saying. Maybe he's
Al
saying
could have opted in, and I think he would have, but instead you gave him a 1+1, right?
Yep.
To keep him around.
Yep.
I think the interesting one for me is Porzingis, where he is really, really talented. There's no doubt about it, but the availability is not anywhere near the talent. So if you wanted to go straight availability, well, then maybe you're thinking Malachi Lyons and Charles Bassey, and we're going to get all these youngsters who we know are going to be good to go for the most part for most of the year.
That's just such a fascinating quote.
It is.
We had to pick between talent and availability, and we leaned more towards talent. That's so open.
Frank, yeah.
Yeah.
Transparent, no doubt.
Very transparent. Hey, we're not done with these quotes, but quick aside while we're on Warriors, and you know how we were at that camp on Friday?
Yeah.
Golden State Sports Academy, and we had Guy Santos and Will Richard on. I didn't realize this, so I just wanted to kind of send out another, not just thank you to everybody at the camp, because my son did attend the camp, and I was under the impression that you and I were there on Friday, and we saw Guy and Will, and we knew they were going to go talk to the kids. And I was under the impression that, when current active Golden State Warriors show up at the camp, like that's a big deal. And they show up at the camp and you get maybe as much time from them as you can, and then you thank them and move them on their way. So I'm driving back with the lovely Christy on Sunday to pick Jude up, and my phone starts blowing up with pictures. And it's him and Will Richard.
Your son?
Yeah.
Just hanging out.
I mean, they're doing the little peace sign. And,
I think I saw that one.
Like he's doing all this. And he's got an autograph on his jersey, and he's got an autograph on his hat.
What's up, Bay Area? It's Will Richard.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, he just sending me these now from 2 days ago. And then some of the stuff in the background didn't add up with that. The calculus is off here. So I get there, and we go for the award ceremony to pick him up. And guess who's there? Shooting the rock and bouncing the ball and hanging around with everybody? Will Richard. So, and apparently that was on Sunday, and Guy came on Saturday, and the camp had asked both of them to be there at a certain time, and both of them were there an hour before that.
Wow. Okay.
I wanted to tell that story because the camp was amazing. The people who run it are amazing. It was the most organized thing I've ever seen. The kid had a freaking blast. So did all the other kids there. And Guy Santos and Will Richard are freaking gems. They spent the majority of their weekend at this camp and showed up before they were asked. I just wanted to share that because I think that's really, really cool.
Super, super impressive. And they're obviously a couple of great young men, and we've had a chance to talk to each of them a small handful of times, and every time I come away more impressed. But I look at the overall organization. You mentioned the organization of the camp, and that is just a spillover of the bigger organization where they do just about everything top shelf. They don't mail anything in, and so you have these players, it's like, look, we need you to do this and this and that, and the standard is set to where, yeah, you're going to show up not only on time, but an hour early, and you're going to give back to the community. It's just awesome.
Totally. I was so impressed by those guys and just thankful. Like, they made the weekend for my son the whole way home. He's talking about the autographs, and he's got everything up in his room already. and his plan for what he's going to wear to Warrior games this year and all of that. And
jersey in the cart?
Yeah, Will Richard has moved up his Warrior rankings.
I can imagine.
I turned around at one point in the car. I go, hey, let me guess, your favorite Warrior is? And I was waiting for him to say Will Richard, and he goes, Steph Curry. I'm like, okay. I go, and your second favorite Warrior is? He goes, Will Richard, but he was already my third, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he moved up. I didn't ask him who he replaced.
Hi, this is Quentin Post. Down a few slots.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah. Arrow down on Quentin Post. Mike Dunleavy expects the Warriors to have a full 15-man roster to begin the season. That's significant because the last few years they have started the year with only 14. Two of those roster spots will go to unhealthy players, Jimmy Butler, Moses Moody. But that means that the Warriors will have 13 healthy players, and then you add in the two-way contracts. So there are still a couple of names that need to be finalized in terms of getting, specific and finalized roster spots. But they will use all of their 15, according to Dunleavy.
That's good. I mean, it makes perfect sense because you are already almost right up there against the second apron, and so you're not going to have much optionality or flexibility down the road anyway unless you make some sort of a trade. So you might as well have some available bodies, and you just mentioned this before with Dunleavy's earlier quote, we chose talent over availability. Well, when you get down to spots 13, 14, and 15, you need people who can be available when you've got no Jimmy, no Moses, and Al probably no back-to-backs. Kristaps is dealing with POTS. Steph has got runner's knee, and you start to work your way down the roster. There's going to be nights where you have 9 able bodies.
Yeah, I mean, and they're hoping, for the Guy Santoses, the Will Richards of the world, the Pods. Don't forget Yaxel.
Yep.
Let's get him in there. I know GP2's got an injury history, but maybe he does well with it this year. DeAnthony Melton, those are Bassey. These guys are going to be playing minutes this year. There's no doubt. Dunleavy also spoke about Steph Curry's future and extension. I want to hold that for a second because KC in Santa Rosa wants to talk about the first Dunleavy quote. Hi, KC. Thank you for calling. What's up?
Hey, gentlemen. Interpretation is interesting. You can look at things many different ways. I looked at Dunleavy's comment as, while a player might be available, we don't see the talent in that player's availability that's worth it. So I don't think he was talking about our players. I think he was talking about other teams' players.
I mean, you might be right. You might be right.
Both.
Yeah, no, I don't. Okay, let's see if we can pull that apart a little further. KC, thanks. I don't think by any stretch he's trying to limit anybody and say, we know this guy's not going to be available this year. He's not like Kristaps. Boy, there's no way he plays 65 games this year. I don't think he's saying that either. And yes, he might be talking a little bit about who was available on the market, but I translated, at least in part, as being an answer to what Steve Kerr said at his press conference months ago when Steve said publicly, we need more people who will play back-to-backs. And Dunleavy's maybe answering that here in saying, we could have done that. We could go get people that could just absolutely play back-to-backs, but they're not as good as these guys.
Right.
They're not as good as Kristaps Porzingis or Al Horford. So we were faced with a choice. We could go get other people and have a better chance of them being there for all of the games, or we could get the better basketball player, and we chose the better basketball player.
And you have to choose the better basketball player, I think, with this group because you've got Steph and Draymond and Jimmy Butler, all older players, and Al Horford as well. And so you can't just go out and find a 25-year-old journeyman, somebody who is going to be able to play because they're younger. And I don't want to make all roads always lead to Jonathan Kuminga, but Kuminga is a guy who, for the most part, he's had some injuries, but he's a younger player who would have a high level of availability as opposed to maybe not as much talent as you think that he needs to have. So somebody like that, a 25-year-old wing who could go out there and play 75 games for you, sure, that would help in terms of eating minutes, but you need to have good players.
Okay. 18 days from now, Steph Curry is eligible for an extension.
Okay.
So, Mike Dunleavy was asked about it, and he said, quote, "I'm pretty confident Steph will finish his career with the Warriors. Ultimately, it's his call, his decision, whether that's allowing his contract to run out and move on, or, look, if he comes to me and wants to be moved, Joe and I will talk it through. We wouldn't love it, but he's earned the right to do what he wants. But as far as the messaging or any idea that he'd be anywhere else, that is not a thing we're looking at or he's looking at." So he does at least acknowledge if Steph wanted that, then we would do it. We wouldn't like it, but we would do it. But he also says that has not happened at this point, and he's very confident that Steph will indeed finish his career here.
Maybe it makes the most sense to me, but then again, you don't know how this year is going to go, and things could break apart in such a way that Steph Curry wants to go play somewhere else. I don't personally see that. I'm just really interested to see in 18 days, as you mentioned, if they come to terms on an extension for Steph Curry, what are the numbers and what does that look like? And it's not that any of us should or could or will judge Steph Curry if he takes every last dollar, because he's earned it. He is the franchise. But at the same time, if he were to take a little bit less, maybe he takes $10 million a year less, that's $10 million worth of salary you can allocate elsewhere. So I'm not looking at this with judgment, but I'm very interested to see if an extension is reached, what that actually looks like.
Well, they've done a good job of sort of making it sound like if he doesn't sign the extension on August 29th, don't freak out. That doesn't necessarily mean that Steph is, standing on someone's throat or forcing the hand or wanting to leave. Even Brian Windhorst, the thing we played yesterday, where he's like, the Warriors could just ask Steph to partner in this, which is, okay, go ahead, don't sign the extension. And then we have that much more flexibility next offseason, and then we can sit down with you and you help us puzzle it out. Your money and others' monies that we can, try to acquire. But there's also no escaping the fact that if he does not sign it on August 29th or August 30th or whatever, everybody's going to freak out.
And it will be a storyline throughout the year. Not the main storyline, but if you get into October, November, December, and, the Warriors are, let's say they're 18-24, and, Steph has got runner's knee a little bit, and the team's just not gelling, and it looks like another lost year, that becomes a louder drumbeat as far as what's Steph going to do. Maybe he wants out once and for all.
One last quote from Dunleavy.
Okay.
Quote, "There are two things I'm confident about with Steph. He really, really wants to win, and he wants to finish his career as a Warrior. I don't think that changes tomorrow, August 29th, the start of the season, the middle of the season, end of next season. Those things are going to be consistent," end quote.
I wonder if that's a two-pronged thing for Steph, and if those things are incongruent,
right?
Which is to say they both don't exist in Golden State any longer. Is there a push-pull of, let me get one more shot at it? LeBron went to Philly and he got number 5. And I want what he has. It's premature, but
look,
I take Mike at his word.
Things can change the conversation at any time. But what I feel confident in, based on listening to everybody speak on this, is could it get to the scenario you're bringing up, which is if at any point it feels like I want to be a Warrior, but I definitely can't win here. Do I want to leave? Sure, I guess it could. But at this point, whatever the Warriors are doing, they seem to have sold Steph Curry on it. And I know that a lot of the fan base doesn't buy that. But whatever the actual discussion is behind the scenes with regard to, for example, the idea that, hey, this is kind of what we can do this year. There's not a lot available to us. We will absolutely put everything we can into the LeBron effort. But outside of that, there's not a lot for us to do that's going to help you this year. But the best thing we can do is play as well as possible, and then here's our plan for the end of the season. Financially, and maybe we can circle some players, and like that's what we want to do. And it appears at this point, Steph has nodded his head and gone, okay, let's do it.
And I think it might have been Nick Friedel or somebody else who joined us saying that any decision that the Warriors make of a grand scheme or a grand scope, rather, Steph Curry is at least, informed or consulted on it. Not that he has the final say. Of course he doesn't. But Steph Curry is aware of everything that they're thinking about doing. And even if this year is a swallow hard, you got to take a gap year, as long as you position yourself in the next offseason to actually make some moves, I think Steph Curry would be okay with it. Not thrilled, but okay.
There's also a quote running around. Man, this feels like a legit quote, but it didn't come from Slater. It didn't come from Dalton Johnson. So I want to see if we can vet this one out, because it's suggesting that Dunleavy said that the Warriors were super aggressive this offseason. And I don't know if I buy that he would. I don't know if he would buy that they would say that, because it sort of makes it sound like he was trying to get rid of current players on the roster and just couldn't.
Right.
I don't know if I buy this one.
Let's see if we can find the quote.
Yeah. No, I got the quote. It's just not from a source that I know. And there's so much just junk on the internet right now. Like the aggregation and all of this stuff has gotten so bad that we've now, it was one thing. Remember when you used to just get got? And it was like Adam Schefter.
Oh, my God.
Would be like, Brock Purdy's out for the year. And you're like, ooh.
I got beat by Rap Sheep. Rap Sheep. The old program director, pre-Nahigian. Hey, you want to break it? Here's some news. You should break it. Get in there and break this. You going to break it? You going to break it? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll break it. And it's breaking news. And it was some cockamamie report. And immediately on the text line, it's like, duped, fake, Rap Sheep. And I'm like, and I looked, Rap Sheep.
But it's different now. Now,
you get Adam Schefter and
actual sites, because now all you got to do is buy a blue check. They just make up a quote. Mike Dunleavy today on Steve Kerr. He's an idiot. End quote. Send. And you'll just be like, what?
Is that real?
No. But
okay.
you know what I'm saying? There's just junk everywhere.